Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be reacting to
3 American myths we don't believe anymore after living in Europe.
There are 3 beliefs about life in the U.S. that Americans, including us, tend to grow up with.
I think we didn't even realize the extent to how ingrained these ideas are in the psyche of Americans until after we left the U.S.
Yeah.
It's almost a little like brainwashing.
A little bit. But now that we live abroad in France, we realize that these almost universally held American beliefs aren't really so true. Hi, I'm Raina.
I'm Jason.
And we are back in house.
Like get bound, so I guess
We're
they're
surrounded
friends.
by American flags. You recite the Pledge of Allegiance every day in school, right? And you're told both directly and...
I will say the Pledge of Allegiance is kind of brainwashing a little bit, but at the same time, because of that, America does have such a strong military because people legit willing to go die for this country.
Because you need to have a sense of unity, because if everyone's off in their individual lives, when stuff starts to move and shake, we need to come together.
Right. So that's why I guess for me the weirdest thing was coming here in the States. I remember vividly when I came in the airports and everywhere there's military, people with the military outfits straight off, they're coming back from wherever they're stationed, and everybody like, oh, thank you for your service, thank you for, like, the difference I guess for me was how appreciated the military personnel, like in Lithuania, I can't speak for all of Europe, I don't know, in Lithuania military people are looked down upon, like, oh, it's the dumb people that go there, like you have no other options in life, you go to military. Here it's the military is looked like it's good to be in the military,
It's an honor.
Yeah, exactly, it's an honor. So I would say it kind of starts with that Pledge of Allegiance. Like as you're a young kid, you kind of ingrained, oh, you got to fight for your country, like love your country. So when you grow up, you want to go. So it's not like your last resort to go. You choose to go. So I definitely see benefit in that, but at the same time, I do also kind of think it is brainwashing. So I see both sides of it.
I don't feel like I was brainwashed because I feel like I did it, and I don't feel like... I feel like there's always going to be someone who feels like they're brainwashed or not.
I'm just saying, I see both sides of the talk. I see both arguments. Like, as I said, for me, the most strangest thing was when I came, like how military personnel is so respected. Like that's
one thing I would never think poorly of military. This thing.
indirectly all the time that the U.S. does everything the best. But then when you move somewhere else, for us it was France, you realize that lots of other places in the world actually do better.
Yeah, it sounds so ridiculous and egotistical, I know, but when you grow up in a country as big and as isolated from other countries as the U.S. is, you just really, genuinely don't know and haven't seen anything different.
Yeah.
Then when you do see those other places, and you realize, look, there's places where people have, universal, high-quality healthcare and affordable education, and it's statistically much safer than the U.S. It really just shocks your American brain.
Yeah.
There's also this, weird, pervasive belief that because the U.S. is the greatest country on Earth, if they haven't figured it out, probably no one has.
Yeah. This can include some really basic things, even basic water sanitation.
Yep.
We had friends and family that came and visited us here in France recently, and they had to ask if they could drink the water. They'd actually brought with them a whole set of advanced water purification equipment, and they were brushing their teeth with bottled water at first before we could talk to them and assure them the tap water is perfectly safe.
France is another advanced country.
Yeah.
And we thought this was actually
hard for me to say. I guess I'm not I wasn't raised here, so what these I do not share these beliefs, so I can't exactly relate to what they're saying. I'm sure some people do think that way, but this is definitely
in some countries when you go to travel they advise you not to drink the water. You can't.
Yeah, you can't. It's really hard for me to say what's the amount of population that actually believes you can't drink water in France. I don't know.
Even more funny because Evian water from Evian France sells in the U.S. for $5 a bottle, and so when you're in the U.S. you can drink French water, but not when you're in France. Oh no, that's a little funny.
Yeah, another commonly held American truism is that Americans are somehow just more free than people in other democracies. You know, even our national anthem, which we sing all the time, it includes the line, you know, the land of the free, the home of the brave. But what does that land of the free actually mean?
Right.
What liberties exactly do people have in the U.S. that they don't have in so many other places around the world? And not long ago, we heard someone describe the difference in how Europeans and Americans view freedom. And it really...
I would say Americans are more free. Like, for example, compared to Germany, in Germany, it's illegal to insult somebody, which is their law. Like, you know, they whatever works for them. But here, go insult whoever the fuck you want to insult. As long as there's, you know, no, like, fist spitting, you know, that kind of thing, man, it's freedom of speech. It's all right. So I do think Americans have more freedom.
Struck home, it really captured the spirit of, I think, what we've observed here.
Not to say other countries don't have freedoms, they do, but overall, I think Americans do have more freedom. With freedom also comes more responsibility, so, you know, like the whole gun thing, you would have to be more responsible because you do have freedom to own guns, other countries don't. But, you know.
Yeah, I think that Americans want the freedom to, you know, the freedom to carry a gun, to do what they want, when they want, to practice their religion openly, to choose how to spend all their money.
Yeah, and the contrast to that was the idea that Europeans are looking more, they see freedoms from. So freedom from the threat of violence, freedom from dying lack of due to health care, freedom from having a religion imposed on them, freedom from pollution and toxins in their environments and food. So, I don't know, we were talking about this concept of what American freedom...
Yeah, I think there isn't a valid point. I think American way of thinking is more individualistic, whereas maybe in Europe is more like the government thinks for you. Because what they're saying is basically Americans want more freedom, like, to, but not freedom from. Like, in Europe, there's freedom from pollution because, you know, there's more, like, regulations, right? Americans don't want regulations, they want freedom to do what they want, whereas in Europe, the government decides, okay, you're going to have freedom from pollution, this is a government decision, is better for you. American point of view is, I want to decide what's better for me, not for the government to decide what's better for me. So there's logic to what they're saying. I get what they're saying, and there's truth to that. That is an interesting point. I never looked at it from that perspective.
Feels like it's become really extreme in the last few years.
Yeah.
Meaning in the U.S. now, like, certain groups expect their own personal freedoms to trump everything else, no matter the cost to society or their fellow Americans.
Yeah, and as an American, the intensity of this individualism, I think it can color how you view the policies of the other countries out there.
Definitely.
You know, because you don't always realize or have the context to realize that these policies, they might mean different forms of freedom and still make for a more stable, fair, open, and enjoyable society.
Yeah. So, I mean, lastly, the thing that has changed that we see differently now is quality of life and how we define it. In the U.S., when we lived there, versus now in France and Europe. When I was a kid in the U.S., my definition of, like, what quality of life or growing up and being able to have a good life was, it kind of revolved around how much money I could make when I grew up. That sounds embarrassingly materialistic. And
not exclusive to the States, and I was raised the same way, even though I was in Eastern Europe, so this is not an American thing.
Kind of is, but I mean,
it is an American thing, but it's not exclusive to the United States.
Honest thing is, to be able to buy more, bigger, nicer, better things, it's just like a big focus of American culture. You see it on TV and movies and advertisements, so, I mean, that soaks in even when you're a kid. The house you can buy,
spoons,
I think it has to do because in Eastern Europe, part of Soviet Union, you didn't have things, so you kind of, whenever you got it, you valued it more. Maybe this doesn't exist in the Western Europe, you know, because they always, I don't know, it's hard to...
Yeah, but what would be the difference? So,
like, for example, my mom said, like, they would get, like, one pair of jeans a year, like, that, and even then they would get the jeans because my grandma knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody. That you couldn't go to a store to buy the jeans, so you valued those jeans. Then, like, tangerines, you would only get, like, a special occasion for Christmas because, again, my grandma knew somebody who knew somebody, so we could get tangerines. So,
powerful grandma.
Yeah, my grandma, you know, in the hometown, yeah, she knew a lot of people. She had the social networking going. But that I'm saying is, like, you didn't have things.
Pre-Facebook.
you didn't have things, so you valued it more, and it kind of. So I think maybe it's Eastern European thing more than like Western Europe. I don't know. Maybe that's not prevalent in Western Europe because if they always had access to things, the material things are not as important. But coming from Eastern Europe, it's definitely materialistic culture is there. Like just because you didn't have access, so you value it. You know, it's ingrained in how I was raised too.
Drive, the size of the TV you have, if you buy your clothes or your candles from like certain shops, that all kind of paints a picture and defines if you have a good quality of life in U.S. culture.
Yeah, I think, maybe in other words, being visibly wealthy is just a stand-in for quality of life in the U.S. So I think American people will sometimes say that the quality of life is lower in Europe. Why? Because that's what you can see. Europeans tend to make less money, have lower incomes. They live in smaller houses. They have fewer cars. They have tiny refrigerators. There's often no clothes dryers. What kind of place is this?
See this video?
But we've come to understand that Europeans tend to have, I think they tend to be wealthier than Americans in two really distinct ways. That might be hard to see from the outside.
How long they live there right now? In 2022, yeah, 2 years. I'd like to see them do this video like 10 years after, see how they change.
Maybe, probably define quality of life better than a simple GDP number or the number of seats in your SUV might capture. I think Europeans tend to have both more time and more peace of mind.
Yeah, I mean, I am not saying in any way that the French or Europeans in general they don't have worries, or they're like sitting around eating bonbons, or they never want to buy some, Air Jordans or an American.
I think that is true what they're saying about this point, that there is more free time and peace of mind. That I do think is true.
French. None of that. But there's one really big difference I think that we've seen, and that is Europeans tend to have a value system around personal time and a social system that around basic human needs that support well-being.
Yeah, those two things, they come together for a quality of life that might be really hard to value on a graph or a balance
That's
sheet.
something that you're learning, that to value that, the quality time, quality of life.
Yeah, as you get older.
Yeah. Because for you can be very work centric, and instead of like working on like your network of being social and just having to slow down a little bit, that's like something that you're working on. You're from Europe.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like when they're saying Europe, it's not exactly Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe is much more like United States than it is what they're describing, at least in my opinion.
I feel like I kind of have this kind of mindset because I feel like I can feel a sense of content. Like I feel like
we talked about this about how in Finland they're like the most content.
Yeah, but the thing is, I grew up in the United States, so I just wonder like the influences on me.
But
that I'm not materialistic like this.
You're in the United States, but your parents are also from the islands, and I feel the islands also kind of have like a very chill mentality too. Because I don't know, I just feel like the islands is chill. So that Caribbean culture, because to me the chillness comes from how fucking late you guys are. Like just because you like 2 hours late, to me that's you like, chill. It's like
you're not gonna miss it. You're not gonna miss anything. Okay?
Like for me, like I'm like we watch German, it's on time. Like that's how like, Lithuania is too. It's on time. For y'all, it's 9 o'clock. It's really 11 o'clock.
I feel like it's like materialistic to feel like okay, you're gonna miss out. You're gonna be without. So you have to be there. You don't have to be there.
Your house could be captured. Yeah. And what do those two things look like in France? There's just a deep respect for your free time, to be able to spend with family, to do things for pleasure, or maybe just intellectual interest. Yeah. This might mean that businesses are open for fewer hours, that work weeks are a little shorter, and workers generally get 5 weeks of vacation per year. This all adds up to like more time for meals with family, more access to high quality food. These are all things that are seen as essential parts of life. Yeah. I'm also not up at night worrying about how am I going to pay and buy my insulin? How am I going to pay for my daughter's education going forward?
So, I mean, again, it's not that life is easy, but there's a sense of ease and safety that I feel here in France that was just missing.
Because I don't say life is easy, but to me, I'm like chilling. I don't know why, but
good for you.
And
everything's gonna be okay.
It's worth way more than that overpriced Pottery Barn comforter ever did in the U.S.
Yeah, wealth as the U.S. glamorizes it with more, and flashier stuff. It just doesn't look the same to me now. Yeah. Overcoming the idea that No one.
Okay. Also, I think it's important to note what they're describing doesn't apply to every American. There's way people. It's such a big country. There's very much wide variety of people, but there is truth to what they're saying. Some like especially TV kind of portrays it, and maybe like the older generations are back then. But I feel like now with social media, people are changing a little bit, and they're getting more kind of moving away from this kind of.
I don't know.
Look.
I feel like social media, I think, is more materialistic. Like now we have the young generation, some people, they're like really buying things.
You think so? I kind of feel like young generation is more like hippies nowadays.
Well, I think there's a.
But exactly, that kind of just proves my point. Like we see everything, so there is truth to what.
Some would like to live in a van. Some they start buying
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like there are people that this applies to, but it's not like a universal that every American is like that.
Guys, of course, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord, and as always, share as much kindness as possible.